Live, and today we begin with an, a note, a statement, an item of news uh, that you rather thought you'd never hear, and that is that there is no doubt, no question, that the animals of the Hamas have beheaded babies. Beheaded babies. You could see in the expressions of the Israelis and the Americans and whomever else reported on this for different nations in the world. You could see it, not tears in some cases, sadness in other cases, shock in other cases, but you could see an otherworldliness in the sense that we think we've been through everything. I sure do, right? I thought it before September 11, and I got a rude awakening, right? And then after November 11, after November 11, I really taught myself never to think that you never know what can happen. You just got to be prepared. You just have to be prepared, and you've got to be prepared to be optimistic, positive. Maybe I don't even mean that. What I mean is to have a plan that can direct you out of it, and whoever else you're responsible for or with. You got to have a plan no matter what happens to you. And then there are things that just shake you to your foundation. And when you hear about babies being beheaded, like airplanes going into buildings, killing innocent people, opening up their breakfast or their computer, it shakes you to your foundation. And then you've got to quickly rebound and say to yourself, how do I prevent this? How do we stop this? If we can't stop it, how do we start to stop it? That should be what's going on here. And to combat this, to make sure this doesn't happen again, or to minimize the number of times it happens, there's a number one thing that has to be done that is not being done. It's fundamental. It's obvious when I say it. And I think it's universally true. And we are not doing it. You can only solve a very complicated, massive problem, social problem. This may be true for a psychological problem as well, but I'm talking about a social problem. When you face it honestly. Let me see if I can give you a simple example from my own experience, right? And that worked for me very, very well, and for my citizens. New York City had levels of crime from about 1969 to 1994, 95, when I first became mayor, that were unthinkable. Don't think there's any city right now that has that level. And New York City, which is suffering a crime wave, when the mayor says it, he doesn't say it's nothing compared to the past. He does try to say it's not as bad as the past. It's very, very hard but when somebody's just been robbed or beaten, or we see an old lady thrown on a track, it's hard to say that. He's actually right. I mean, I don't know what we're going to end this year with in murders, maybe 400, maybe. Even if it were 500, 600 even. I don't want that, obviously. We used to be 2,000. 2,000. So in order to bring it down, I had to believe I could do it, and I had to think my way through all the things that could work and try them. And I needed a guiding philosophy, which was the broken windows theory. You got to work on small things as well as big things. You got to teach at the local level respect for the law. You have to give people at the local level a sense of security. They got to see their neighborhoods improving, not just crime rates going down. And then second, you have to actually bring it down. You have to actually do it. And the CompStat program was the thing that allowed me to do that. So if I apply that to this, I say, let's start by facing the enemy. The enemy, in near term, are Islamic terrorists. We have to say the words Islamic terrorist. We can't be afraid that we're going to offend decent Islamic people if we say the word Islamic terrorists, because the Islamic terrorists are our mortal enemies, and they bear no relationship in general or in large numbers to other members of the Islamic faith, any more than people in any group who have terrorists or criminals. It doesn't define the whole group. I mean, not to say that people don't do that, because some people suffer still from prejudice and bias, but good people don't do that, and we can work on that. We can work on that. What we can't work on is denying the problem. And we've been denying Islamic terrorism since Obama, when he went through 8 years of not being willing to say it. We had a 4-year revival with Trump, who actually was left with an Islamic problem, Islamic terrorist problem, with a revived Al Qaeda, which he called stupidly Obama the JV. We didn't know now the kind of intelligence officials that he had. I found out when they libeled me and did that thing about Russian collusion, which was totally not true. I found out what useless, dishonest people they are. But maybe we didn't know that then. So let's face it. The Palestinian people, in a very large sense, and generally you can't make these big statements about people, but in this case, it's unfortunately true because there aren't that many people. The Palestinian people buy into the things that make this kind of terrorism possible. One, that Jews should be eliminated from the earth. Certainly Israel should be eliminated from the earth. Many go as far as to say Jews, and sometimes interchangeably say Israel, Israelis, Israel, or the Jewish nation. They have a history of that going back to alliances with Hitler. So it's not just new. It's in the history, and it's in the current philosophy, if you want to call it that, of the Islamic extremist terrorist leaders. Their two top targets are Jews and Americans. And in many Palestinian schools, that is taught, not just schools controlled by Hamas, but also up in the Golan Heights. So the enemy are the Palestinians. The people who carried out the attack were Hamas, but Israel is at war with Palestine. I know they don't want to say that, because politically you can't say that. But until you can say that, you can't win. You got to face your enemy. Now you got to go further. Palestine's not alone. Palestine has lots of supporters, none more critical than Iran. None. If you wanted to skip Palestine and take out Iran, you'd take out Palestine. What you don't do is give them $6 billion. What you don't do is make love to them the way Biden has done and the way Obama did for 8 years. What you don't do is slip them hundreds of millions in cash so that it could directly go to the drug dealers. Can't tell me Obama didn't know that. So we don't face any of this. So what we're faced with, let's look at this. Let's look at the picture here, so that I mean, this is not as, I don't have to tell you that you have to look away or whatever, but this picture, at least, it gives you a sense of what's going on. Those are the body bags. Those are the Israeli soldiers. And I remember when I was asked how many body bags I needed for, when I asked how many body bags I needed for September 11, and I was told by Dr. Hirsch, you won't need many because the people were evaporated and crushed. and it was a moment that lives with me forever. And those are, I believe, not babies, but children, because not only have babies been beheaded, but at least 40 children were killed in one group of kibbutzim. They focused on the children and killed about 40 of them. Those are some of the children, and the soldiers have to deal with it. Now, the Israelis have hit back, and that map gives you a bit of an idea of where. You see the pink area. You see the pink area is the Strip, Gaza Strip, and you see there five large stars for targets. So they were hit very hard. Straight 24-hour bombardment. I believe it was 24-hour bombardment by the Israelis. They hit successfully 450 targets. And you can see from that map, that is not a very big area. That is a rather confined area, isn't it? Right there. Rather confined area. So they pretty much went north to south, 450 hits, and devastation overnight. But that's the that may be the calm before the storm, because right now, as we speak, on that border, which I've been on any number of times, on that border is massing an undetermined or an unrevealed large number of Israeli forces. Only reason for the delay being the reserves had to be called up, and to the extent they can in a few days, made battle ready. A few days of quick orientation from their civilian lives to what they're going to have to do now, which is to engage in hand-to-hand combat, street-by-street combat. I believe the goal is to wipe out Hamas. And I would say there's absolute justification for it. And if you want to save your babies, it's probably necessary. If you don't mind sacrificing your babies, we'll go easy on them. Because whether you go easy on them or not, they're going to come after you until they're eliminated. They hate you. And the hatred is so deep. I mean, the Jewish people, the hatred is so deep that all those years of negotiation were really just a con job by Arafat to get billions and to make a fool out of Bill Clinton, which he very successfully did. I think the toll right now, 1,200 Israelis, I think there are 1,200 Israelis dead and 2,700 that are injured. And of course, those numbers are always, that's right, 1,200 Israelis have died, at least is the number here, and more than 2,700 injured. In the case of the Palestinians, it's 1,120 people have been killed, but 5,300 have been injured. And a fair amount of the population are now dislocated because the country is being, you might say, leveled. And then probably, tomorrow's Thursday, right? Probably sometime within the next 24 hours, the invasion will take place. And the purpose of the invasion, it would seem to me, is to overwhelm, take control of Hamas, eliminate them, and then over a period of time, create stability for the Gaza Strip and to start a different regime, which should be no talk of a Palestinian state. That's gone over. American should not support that. The last thing in the world we needed is another terrorist state. Got enough problems with Iran. Number two, they should be put on a program of what did Hillary want to do to Republicans? She wanted to deprogram them. Yeah, they should be deprogrammed. They should get out of their heads killing Jews and killing Americans. And until that's out of their heads, and they're ready to establish an honest, lawful, decent government, we should have no part of trying to make them into some kind of a authority or government or whatever the heck, because we do not need an ally of Iran right there on the borders of Israel or anyplace else. And it is disgraceful that we can't stand up to Iran. With this going on in the world, can you imagine how stupid we look having just given $6 billion to Iran? I ask you to think from the outside. What do you think foreign leaders think of us? Now, they don't confine it just to Biden and say, oh, they have a demented communist president. They think of it as the American people have gone wacky, because to a large extent, you know, they wonder, as I do, how the hell did you elect him? Now, let's, do we have the little clip from him ready? Because he doesn't seem, in this particular clip, he finally, after having made about 2 minutes worth of comments and put out a 3-paragraph statement, he made a talk. I'm going to ask for your help with it because I'm not sure I understand what he said. But in any event, he did mention Iran, but not in any way that would hold Iran accountable or frighten them so they don't do it again. But I think we should play it so that you can make your own judgment about our demented president.
Just look, I mean, I'll never forget, or I won't go into that. Anyway, I just think that if we stay true to our values, pursue with every inch and every bit of our energy to get this right, we can change the Middle East.
Well, I mean, a leader has to look sharp, ready to go, communicating clearly, making the objective obvious. The man looks like he's in a fog. I wonder if he was asked where he was, if he could have answered clearly. It sure doesn't look like he has a plan. It sure doesn't look that he understands that he's got to hold Iran accountable. He's fighting like heck, freezing the money that he already gave them. That's, of course, ridiculous. To freeze the money would be exactly what he should do. It would send them all a message that they can't push us around and they can't push our friends around. But he's not interested in that message. I don't know what message he's interested in. And I don't believe in that message, Ted. He made any mention of anti-Semitism, did he?
Not one bit.
No, I don't think he made any mention of anti-Semitism. And there's no question there's a massive amount of anti-Semitism, going on both in this, and that's how they get their allies to a large extent, as well as, in the rest of the world. But I mean, the real lack, and therefore the inability to face this correctly, as I said, you have to recognize a problem honestly in order to solve it. So we had to recognize the problem of crime, and we had to recognize where it was. And if our data was wrong, our solution was going to be wrong. Well, if we're wrong, and we don't focus on Islamic terrorism as we didn't do under Obama, and we're not doing under Biden, we're even letting him in this country in numbers we never did before, we're going to pay a terrible price. And Israel has now paid a terrible price because we haven't paid it. We haven't been on Israel's side since the day Biden got into office. And I know during the Obama administration, we weren't on Israel's side. Israeli officials told me behind Biden's back that they considered him someone who was on the other side, meaning in favor of the Islamic countries and groups. And a lot of that showed in his unwillingness to say Islamic terrorism when they were slaughtering us. And you had to recognize the enemy to stop the enemy, and he didn't. They grew under him. And the guy who had to level them down and back was Trump, who has no difficulty saying Islamic terrorist. We also, in our effort to give away money like water, it's discovered that we gave $730 million to a UN organization for refugee assistance in the West Bank and Gaza Strip, that harbored personnel who have committed violence, incited violence against Israel, and made numerous anti-Semitic remarks. And do you really think the $730 million went to the refugees? If you do, you really don't know what's going on in the world. How did Mrs. Arafat get so rich? And why are the Palestinians so poor when we've probably given them hundreds of millions of billions? Because if half of that 730 million reaches its intended target, it'd be a victory. And half of it is going to the crooks. Because if you're not a terrorist, you're a crook if you're running the Palestinian Authority. That's unfortunately the case. And then what are we doing in Congress with Rashida Tlaib, who has a Palestinian flag proudly displayed right outside her office? I didn't get a full picture of this, but I do have this to show you. Here, you can take a look at it. There she is, Rashida Tlaib, who had a hard time saying anything negative about even Hamas, and will say nothing negative about the Palestinian people. It's as if she and the other people in the squad are pretending that this Hamas comes from Mars, not from Palestine. When you're at war with the United States, you don't say you're at war with the United States Army. You're at war with the United States. We weren't at war with the German army. We were at war with Germany. We're not at war with Hamas. Is the military force carrying out what really is the will of the Palestinian people. There is no question. I'm not saying every single one, but a heck of a lot more united than probably we are. And you can tell we're not united because I showed you Tlaib, but there is what I would call more than what there should be. What I'm saying is, in a situation like this, given the atrocities of this country, which easily equal Putin, they are not receiving within the United States or around the world the kind of opprobrium and the kind of condemnation that Russia received. And what they're doing is, I don't know. I'd be inclined to say that worse than Russia, but I don't feel comfortable evaluating atrocities. You know, I can evaluate the Holocaust because the numbers are so horrendous and the plan for the Holocaust was so horrendous, elimination of the Jewish people, and say that is the worst that at least I can contemplate. But as between the invasion of Ukraine and going house to house there, and this invasion, which seems to have been focused on children and torturing them, and the recent beheading of them. As I said, one kibbutz, 40 or 60 children, 40 children were killed, and some of those were beheaded.
I mean, Hamas, and you can question how free these elections were, but they won big time in elections in Gaza, right, in what some call the Palestinian territories. So, as you said, Mayor, there's not this great separation between Hamas and the Palestinian, what some refer to as the Palestinian people, right? They won.
Well,
They were chosen, and depending on, I'm not saying they're probably not the most fairest elections, but they, one way or another, have been put in charge of
no,
this
I mean,
region.
I
They
believe
can be rejected.
I believe in a way they turned out to be a balanced election because Fatah would be as good at stealing votes as they are. Or the difference between Fatah, which runs Northern Palestinian Authority, otherwise known as the Golan, right? The Golan Heights, and the Gaza Strip, is that Fatah and Hamas don't see eye to eye, and Fatah postures itself as the more peaceful of the two. It may actually be that they don't have the resources for violence that anymore. They used to be the PLO and the most the most vicious of the groups. But when Hamas came along, Arafat carved out another role for them. They've become a total, absolute con operation. I mean, they're gangsters. They intimidate within the Palestinian Authority, and they get money from all over the world, and they don't give it to their people, and their people starve. But Arafat gets fat as hell, and now he's dead, but his successors do. And they are very crafty and very dishonest. They're the ones that were offered everything and turned Clinton down, and you've got to take a lesson from that. The lesson for that is they do not want peace because you don't make money with peace. They make money with war. And Hamas really doesn't want peace. They want the elimination of the Jewish people. And it may be that one is the head of the spear, but the other is the spear. And if you think that on those goals, there's a great deal of disagreement in Northern Palestinian Authority or the Fatah part, you're deadly inaccurate. And so let's be honest. I know it's nice to say these terrorists are just a small group and they don't reflect the attitude of the Palestinian people. You want to defeat them? I told you got to stand up to the truth. The truth is that, yes, Hamas is the worst of it, but so is Fatah. They contribute their own to this terrorist state. And most of the country is committed to brutal, barbaric terrorism, and therefore should not ever be allowed to become a state until that is changed and demonstrated as a change for 10 or 20 years. With that, we'll take a short break. Towers Foundation delivers on its promise to do good and never forget the sacrifices America's greatest heroes have made for us. Heroes who risked their lives to keep our communities and our country safe. Heroes like United States Marine Corps Captain and pilot John Jeremy Sachs. Captain Sachs sustained fatal injuries when his military aircraft crashed during training, killing him and 5 other service members. He's remembered by loved ones as courageous, brilliant, and devoted to his career, family, and friends. John is survived by his wife, Amber, who gave birth to their second daughter 3 months after his death. Tunnel to Towers paid the mortgage on the family home for Amber and their 2 daughters. The foundation has helped over 1,000 military and first responder families navigate the worst of times by removing the burden of a mortgage payment. Our nation's heroes and their families need your help now more than ever. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. T2T.org. That's T, the number 2T.org. T2T.org. Please donate now.
You're kidding.
16
Paul
points.
Castellano. This is Long Island, right?
No, Staten Island. Too bad we didn't.
And we're back.
Too bad we can't go out there and take a picture of it, right?
Tell me where it is. You know where it is?
Sure, it's in Staten Island, in Toad Hill.
We'll do it.
I mean, I'm sure that.
Well, the reason for that is I just informed my my team here that Paul Castellano's house is up for sale for 16.8 million. I'll show you a picture of it later, and we'll get to that in a little while to see if any of you are interested. And I can tell you a lot about the phone system there and where to put secret cameras, because I feel like I've been a guest in his house for a long period of time when the FBI had it. They had it wired not only for sound but for video. That's when we went after bad guys, not Catholics who like the Latin Mass.
Was that when agents picked up?
That's when agents were
he was having an affair with his
agents of
maid.
the United States as opposed to agents of the Biden administration.
But Paul Castellano, specifically your or the agents of the FBI, recording Paul in his home, discovered he was having a affair with the maid. Is that Paul Castellano?
I do not. I've always felt that should never be commented on. That's a bunch of bull. I'm after guys for murder, for extortion, not for having affairs with maids. That's the subject for family court, domestic court, not for the United States Attorney's Office.
Great
I wish
answer.
there are too many young prosecutors nowadays who don't understand that, nor do the Democrats who go after Republicans on all that kind of crap. And
So true.
and they don't. And boy, you could go after them even more and I know that. But I want to introduce a new character into this, and I'm going to show you his picture in a minute in case you see him in your neighborhood. And that is Mohammed Deif, D-E-I-F, Mohammed Deif. Mohammed Deif is nicknamed. You see, it's funny. Like the Mafia guys, they all have nicknames. Like Biden, right? They all have AKAs, also known as. You ever look at an indictment, a Mafia indictment? If there's no AKA, he's really not a member of the Mafia. I told you one time I managed to sign these indictments all the time, go over them and sign them, and I'd always look at the caption and read the names, because the nicknames, some of the nicknames were hilarious. Joe the Scooch, things like that.
One-eyed fish.
One-eyed this. That guy could be actually blind. The nicknames based on physical characteristics either were sarcastic in the sense that you work like, Tony Fats.
I was just going to ask you, Tony Fats. Is he fat or skinny?
They might take a guy who's like 300 pounds and call him Slim. Ralphie Slim. Things like that.
Yeah.
And they often had nice AKAs that somebody liked, and then they had one behind their back. Like Carmine Persico was Junior.
Yeah.
He liked that. He felt very, but behind the back they called him the Snake because of his personality.
Did he know that eventually? Did you tell him? Did you remind him, Mayor?
I put it in the indictment, which enraged him. It enraged him. He voted. I talked him into wanting to kill me. He voted against, I think, my being killed by the Mafia Commission, who voted 3-2 not to kill me. Thank you. But then when I put him in jail for 100 years, then I tried to do it for another 100 years, which I succeeded in doing. He got angry at me, and he thought I showed no respect, and he put out a contract to kill me. But it was a cheap contract. He was really cheap. I wasn't really, the FBI, I think I got some protection for that one. I might not even gotten protection because it was such a cheap contract. And the FBI in those days was so good. I felt I felt like with the FBI, I had no.
You weren't concerned.
No, and I'll tell you one thing they weren't was political, man. They go after anybody from any political party. And with them, we would resist. There was a point where they wanted to use me to create problems for Geraldine Ferrara. And I just said, go to hell. You're not going to do it. I'm sorry. I didn't sign up, to do political dirt. Signed up to put major criminals in jail. And I turned down crimes that was stupid for federal courts. You got to have some balance. So this Mohammed Deif, it says here, the wheelchair-bound terror chief and former bomb maker said in a broadcast Saturday, according to Financial Review, so that the enemy understands that he can no longer revel without being held to account. We are going to take actions, and we're going to continue to take actions like this. Deif has remained in the shadows, for decades, and but he is the one that was one of the prime players in organizing this attack. He also is known as Mohammed Diab Ibrahim al-Masri, and he's already racked up killings of dozens and dozens of Israelis and probably Americans too. So this is a really bad guy, and we'll put out a picture right after we take our next break. And before we do that, and because I got to have something after looking at this ugly, these guys are all ugly, isn't it true? I tell you what, they also all look like. They all look dirty. It looks like they hang around they sleep with their camels.
Well, after our balance of nature minute,
You think these animals sleep with their camels?
I do have some questions about, because we hear, Mayor, how sophisticated and how this was, caught all the intelligence people off guard, and some of that may be true, but obviously it would probably take a little bit of effort to keep it hidden and to organize that many people to attack. But it doesn't seem that when they like to use this word sophisticated.
Yeah, I don't
and
know.
I'd like to ask you, Mayor. It doesn't seem like something that would necessarily I'd label as sophisticated, as much as yes, it took organization and it took effort to keep it hidden. But what do you say to that?
Well, I think you have it just right. I think that's what they mean by sophisticated, and it's probably the wrong use of the word sophisticated. It was a pretty basic attack.
Yeah,
very well executed. There's nothing unique about the attack. A little bit, the paragliders, they haven't been utilized in battle this way before. I think it was a surprise that they could. I don't think it was just a surprise that they took. No, it was a surprise. It took Israel off guard, and it was a surprise that they were able to penetrate so deeply and accomplish so much without getting pushed out more quickly. That all of that was a surprise. But was it a terribly inventive, creative strike so that you would call it sophisticated? No. Would you call it effective? Damn yes. It was a very effective strike, and it made a couple of points that probably is another reason for it, because Iran uses it as a test, because they want to do the same thing. So they have a stalking horse, right? These people. So this told them a lot about Israeli vulnerabilities. Now, God willing, Israel does the same thing. They learn a lot from this, and they plug up those vulnerabilities. I don't think this same attack would have worked when was it? I bet 2015 or so, when they were shooting rockets off from Gaza. And Iron Dome was knocking them down one at a time. I don't think an attack. I think the border was better secured then, and I was surprised. I'm not surprised that they pierced the border. I thought they'd be able to do that with enough intensity, but I thought it would take a lot more.
Does anybody know how many of those paragliders there actually were? It'd be an interesting thing to know. How many?
It could be that because the smart thing to do would be there really weren't all that many, but they made it appear as if
exactly. And I think that's
now if that were true, now you're starting to justify the word sophisticated attack.
Yeah.
If they had like if they had 100 and we thought it was 1,000, that's pretty damn smart. But the reality is they did a very quick and a very effective penetration, and that can't be allowed to happen again. And now it's going to be interesting to see, because just the opposite. Israel has, of course, announced its intention. It would have been impossible for them not to, because the eyes of the world are on them. They're a small country, and if they start putting together even 100,000 troops, you're going to know it. And since they are a public army, civilian public army, it isn't as if they've got them all sitting in bases. In fact, they really don't have bases in Israel. Did you know that? Really?
They don't
really have bases. Most of those troops train and go back and forth by bus
to home.
You get on an Israeli bus and you got 4 or 5 troops on there with their
guns
on their shoulder. The kids are going home at night to mommy, and then they go get trained. Then they'll go away for a period of time, but they do both forms of service. So some of it is living at home service, and they commute.
Well, and so we've heard the term kibbutz. What's a kibbutz?
A kibbutz is an old cooperative. It's really socialist to communist in origin, and it's a group of people that they had come over, to settle Israel originally, and a group of socialist Jews decided on this farming cooperative. So at least the original kibbutz, you didn't own the land. You had land assigned to you, and everybody shared in an equal pot. And they took care of each other. And
a gang.
Settlement? Is this different than settlements?
They were
Are these
peaceful.
these are different than settlements or similar to settlements?
Well, there were settlements that weren't kibbutzes, and there were settlements that were kibbutzes.
Yeah. Okay.
A kibbutz is a organized community where originally everybody got supported by everybody else.
Yeah.
A small socialist community.
Yeah.
Whether they're still socialist or not, because Bibi, I mean, one of his other great accomplishments was he flipped the economy of Israel from socialist to capitalist, and Israel has,
one of the strongest economies in the world,
right?
From technology to all these other areas.
For a country that size, it's actually a miracle.
It's amazing, and with what they're facing every day,
but he took over a socialist country. When I first met him, and he was a minister in government, he was one of the people in the Likud party. Of course, the Likud party was a conservative party that always criticized the socialist economy of Israel. And when he got a chance to become prime minister, he changed it. He did that 2 prime ministerships ago. Well, I'm going to tell you a little about balance of nature, because if you're going to go to war, you're going to need this. You got to have all your fruits and vegetables every day. They have all of the nutrients that you're seeking in so many of the supplements that you take, or the food you try to eat and you don't succeed in eating. So these are filled with 30, 40 vegetables, 30, 40 fruits. You got to take this once or twice a day. I believe it's better to take it twice a day, and it will give you a great deal of energy to start with, but it also will give you a lot of protection against illness. It'll keep you it'll keep you she's in a much better frame of mind. Nothing like fruit and vegetables to really make your diet a very, very, very healthy one. And since we lead busy lives, and when we order, we may start on a regimen of ordering enough fruit, we forget, and this way you don't have to worry about it. And then your fruits and vegetables are just gravy, not gravy, but extra nutrients. So that's what we know about this guy. And that's what we know about this Deif guy who started this. And I don't.
Apparently, Deif means guest in Arabic. And he got the nickname guest from traveling around, from constantly moving to avoid detection. Mm-hmm. So he goes from terrorist to terrorist, crashing on their couch. So to speak.
Well, his other nickname is the Cat.
The Cat.
He's a one-legged. Has only one leg, which is why he's in a wheelchair at times. He has only one leg, probably close to killing somebody. Maybe the guy almost killed him. Boy, that would have been good, right?
Yeah.
If the guy could have gotten him.
So Mayor, with a group like Hamas, I mean, this is probably the strongest attack that they've done. But do they just have more and more people that are ready to fight? I mean, I would imagine there's only so many people that you can indoctrinate and to get to the point where they're killing kids, right?
Yeah, I think.
Is there a way to kill so many of them that you've taken that out, or are they able?
Yeah, they are a limited. They're a limited group, much larger group, and a better, a much more effective military is Hezbollah, and they are already doing skirmish attacks from the north of Israel. So I'm not sure that the map doesn't go up that far, but if we had a map, they are basically situated in the north of Israel. One could say that Lebanon is their home, right, which is right north of Israel. You can, it's close as New York and New Jersey, New York and Connecticut. Sort of reminds you of New York and Connecticut because you just go straight north, go over a border, and you're in Lebanon. And that Hezbollah is located in a number of different places, but that I would say that's probably where they have what you would say their headquarters, and they have very, very deep ties with the Russians, and to some extent with the Chinese. But the Russians only the Russians only got back in the Middle East because of Obama, who invited them back. I mean, these two men together have done more damage to this country than a whole group of American presidents combined. I mean, they were terrible choices. And I do hope to God that the American people can overcome the media brainwashing that we are subjected to, and just not vote Democrat this time, because you're going to vote for a crooked government. You're going to vote for a government that caves into these people, and you're going to vote for a government that has so many deals and is compromised in so many ways. The last thing they'd ever think about is the best interest of the American people, which is a terrible thing. Terrible thing. So a little politics. Ted, what's going on with politics? I saw another poll that Trump went up another 4 or 5 points.
Trump is up big in Michigan, which of course could be a Trump is up big in a new poll in Michigan, which could be a key state for the president. With Biden's numbers coming down so much, right? Trump winning Michigan in 2016, that was considered one of the upsets.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not to us, but to many people. And then in 2020,
I thought of it as an upset. I mean, I wasn't shocked. I wasn't shocked, but I was 50-50 as to whether we could make it over the top. But Biden's not going to be the candidate. So we're going to have to be ready for a switch. You just looked at him a few minutes ago. He's not going to last.
It's you, and you've been saying this, Mayor, for over a year now, or for, at least since I've been with you. And I think I've heard you say it before that you don't think he's going to be on the ticket. You don't think he's going to be.
I don't think he's going to make it to the starting line.
and obviously, there's a number of things that could happen that would render him unable to be on that on that ballot.
Consensus about the surprise guest that they have for everybody. They talk about Michelle Obama, right? But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the Obamas want to get anywhere near this anymore.
Newsom.
Oh,
I guess Newsom is the.
He wants it, right? He wants it.
It looks that way. It's kind of like McCarthy, who tried to get back in. I guess he's dropped out now, but he was on television like every half hour for a while. Here he is, the ex-speaker. He was on television more as the ex-speaker than he was as a speaker.
Look, I feel like I'd be like him, but there's also a chance that if that happened to me, I would take a trip for a week, right? Yeah. I would take a hike for a week, go find some.
Isn't he though like the Chris Christie of the Democrats or something? Do people really like him?
No. You're talking about Newsom?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah. I don't think they really like him. Do the Democrats like this guy?
They're so easy to Democrat voters will,
I
if the
don't know.
media tells them that this is the guy.
Honestly,
they'll
I don't know
become
for sure if they like him or not.
It's-
I get kind of the impression that he's a little bit of one of these guys that thinks he's better than everybody else. So he's just not. He doesn't seem like a warm and fuzzy guy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, his likability is questionable, I think.
But he fits the articulate, smart, handsome, that sort of thing. And also just an unbelievably horrible governor.
I'm still pissed about Hillary Clinton suggesting that people need to be programmed. I mean, isn't that something? And isn't there evidence of it when you look at how resistant people are to denounce what just happened? Our half of our political system doesn't want to admit that this was horrific what just happened over in Israel.
Democrats have been, particularly Biden, very slow to respond and very careful in their wording not to offend Iran, not to offend the Palestinian people, who are, after all, the ones who did it. And they focused just on the army that carried it out, Hamas. And even there, a lot of people won't condemn Hamas. Now, what's going on in Dearborn, Michigan? I've been to Dearborn quite a bit, and I remember right after September 11, I went there, and I was told you need extra security.
You were told that?
Oh, yeah, and I had it.
Well, I will say, Mayor. So I'm from Michigan, of course. There's a large Middle Eastern population, specifically Lebanese, specifically Palestinian Lebanese. Self-identified, right? And a lot, man, there's so many places we go with this, right? A lot of these folks left their land voluntarily, and all of a sudden, but they have these claims, right, for this land in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Yet here they are in Dearborn talking to me. Their family's been here. What do you mean you're here now?
But are they? But I mean, what is there is some level of terrorist infiltration.
Yes,
but I never got the impression it was pervasive.
Well, and of course, following 9/11, and so when they told you to have security, I have a feeling some of that is, there's some elements who probably look at 9/11 and the response by some to the Muslim community, right, following the attacks. So in some warped way, they then, were probably warning you because some on the far left in that community may have looked at someone like you and saw you as kind of the face of what was some backlash, right? That Muslims faced.
That would have been really unfair because
9/11.
New York had a great record of not attacking them.
Of course.
And not only that, if
you
they
went out of your way. I remember. I see the
if
video.
If they would go back and listen to what I said that very night, I talked about not striking out against Arab or Muslim people. Otherwise, we become what we're opposing.
And I will say, I think a good being from Michigan.
And I was so proud. I was so proud of my city. We had almost nothing.
And I think you're giving credit for that. Yeah. And I will say, this is a very small minority, right? I think you are overall given credit for being.
The Biden people wouldn't give me credit for that.
But
to them, I'm a broken down old drunk.
The Arab there's a difference, right? So the Arab American population in Michigan and the Muslim population in Michigan. These are, you can't generalize any group, right? But these are, for the most part, active members of the community. I mean, you would see some of these folks and just see like Detroiters, right? You would think normally these are Detroiters. I associate these communities with Detroit in a lot of ways. So to see what we saw, and we'll play this clip here, to see what we saw was very disturbing. What we saw was a room full of, presumably a lot of these are Michiganders and Americans waving the Palestinian flag, cheering on. There's only way to put it, right? They're cheering on what occurred this weekend.
They're cheering
on.
What
the hell else are you doing?
I mean, the thing about this was,
we can play it when you're ready.
This was like September 11th, and this analogy is a perfect one between the two, even if some of them aren't perfect. It was an attack on civilians. Yeah, this was a civilian attack. I mean, this wasn't an attack on. They do have some bases. It wasn't an attack on their bases, on their airfields. This was an attack, and it seemed to me they moved it a lot in direction of children, but they certainly were going after civilians. I mean, that's a pure terrorist attack when you do that. Why don't we have them play it, and then we'll ask some questions, Rob?
The imams have set up on the lobby on the second floor outside. If anybody wants to pray before they leave, the imams will be out there. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! No justice! Put your flags up. No justice! No justice! No justice! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Oh, that was a lot of people.
Whoa.
Lucky the balcony wasn't full, but there were a lot of people.
Yeah. There's more than 100,000. But Mayor, why are they not rejecting and ashamed of what Hamas did this past weekend?
Well, I don't know about the ones in America, but the Palestinians in Palestine are taught from the earliest grades to hate Jews, to kill Jews, and to hate Americans. And then they are given specific training in how to do it. And that is not 100%, but it's pervasive. Meaning it's most of the places. So when you say it's really Hamas that we're fighting, that is not true. These people are on Hamas's side.
Yeah. They're cheering and
They're
waving the
now
flag.
cheering what Hamas did
Yes.
in the name of the Palestinian people. And the Palestinian people are showing us it is in their name, and they were doing plenty of celebrating in the Palestinian Authority until the 450 strikes last night, because there are a lot of places there aren't people left to celebrate. So shall we take our
QUX.
our last break for QUX?
The year is 2022. Cancel culture is the new normal. Online freedom as we know it has ended. Digital stockades are here. All activity is monitored, stored, and predictively analyzed by a technological cartel. We're being converted into a digital resource, a digital currency to be farmed for metadata and loaded into a computerized combine, blockchained to a social engineering operating system. However, it doesn't have to be this way. Be part of a new technological revolution. Right now, 1,000 test pilots have launched themselves into a new digital frontier, a private network outside of big tech control. New technology with state-of-the-art digital engagement and never-done-before security and privacy features that are now operational. With Qwik's digital engagement, entertainment, communication, and commercial exchange will never be the same. We are QUX. Qwik's. Advanced pre-release sales are limited to 3,000. Order now by visiting Qwix.tv. Get yours now before they sell out. Be part of a brand new online experience that you control.
Well, welcome back. And in case you're in the market for a home, we have one for you in Staten Island, Toad Hill. Shall we show them? Okay, put it on if you can. There it is. Nice home, right? See, can you have enough of it there? Can you see the whole thing? There it is. Nice house, right? It's going for 16 point something million, which is only a few million less than Mar-a-Lago. So I think maybe I'd go for Mar-a-Lago. That was the home of mob boss Paul Castellano, who was killed in front of Sparks Restaurant during a case where he was on trial. My case, and he's been out of there for a while. But if you look, I believe it's here. Because the picture could have flipped both sides of the house. But one of these two, and I think it was this one because it jutted out more, was his study. He conducted most of his business in his study. I say that way because I don't think Paul spent a lot of time studying. And I know that room intimately because I probably watched a couple hundred hours of tape in that room. That room was wired for sound and video. I cannot tell you the other rooms that were, but it was all tasteful. And boy, did we get plenty of evidence out of there. He'd come back from a meeting and he'd say, who did he dislike? Well, he disliked
The snake?
He did. Oh, he hated the snake. Yeah, hated him. That guy. All that guy wants to do is kill people. What the hell's wrong with him?
Really?
I mean, yeah.
He didn't like killing people, Paul.
Oh, he didn't mind killing people. He just wanted everybody to know it.
Yeah.
He wanted to keep it. And he was one of these guys who had the illusion that he was a businessman. I'm really a businessman. If I have to occasionally wipe somebody out, of course, he had a crew, the DeMeo crew, that probably killed more than anyone. And they also had a guy who ended up being an informant for us, who was an expert in chopping up bodies, of which he did over 40. He's a butcher.
That was his nickname? Please tell me that was his nickname.
That's what he was.
Oh, he was a butcher in real life.
That's what he was. Yes, he was a very good one.
Like for meat, like meat.
Yes.
Yeah, they would go. It was in Staten Island, and they were Italian, and their wives would go. And Vito,
No.
they got to know
No.
Vito, and they recruited Vito because he was so good at chopping up bodies. And then they distribute little parts in different places, so it would be hard to find the bodies. And Vito was gay and could not become a member because he was gay.
But he was fully Italian.
But he was I believe he was fully Italian enough to let him in. And I remember for one of the first days I was U.S. attorney, he called me on the phone from the jail now gone, the one where Epstein committed
He was suicided, as I like to
suicide.
say, where he was suicided.
where he committed suicide.
Yeah.
Where he committed
I
suicide.
so what about, he called you from jail. This
And
is
he
the
told
butcher.
me, he introduced himself. He said he was the key witness in that case, and that he always had. He was that Walter Mack, who was the assistant U.S. attorney who handled him, and I always gave him permission to call if anything went wrong, and if he couldn't get me, he could get the boss. So I said, "Oh well, okay, Vito." And he said, "I'm gay." And I said, "Okay, you're gay." I mean, it was a little unusual in those days. For a mafia guy, particularly. I mean, it could be that a lot of mafia guys were gay, but they didn't go around telling you. Right? He said, "I'm gay." I said, "Okay." And he said, "You know something? It is true they never would make me a member, but they treated me with more respect than your marshals do. I want you to tell them to respect me, even though I'm gay." I said, "Well, okay, Vito, I'll talk to Walter about it, and we'll see what we can do. I mean, I can't. I got to look into this. I can't just accept it." He said, "I know. I've been told you're a very, very thorough guy. I think we're going to have a lot of success working together." And I'm thinking to myself, did I really want this job? I'm going to work with this guy who's chopped up 40 bodies.
And he's telling you
How about the guy that I had that did 13?
you were to work together.
How about the guy who did 13 murders? And the big joke in the office was, if there's somebody one of our kids wanted whacked, they'd say, "Can I borrow him so he can get off the unlucky number?" Tell him, "Shut up and get out of here. I'm going to have to report you." Well, how people develop when you're on a job like that. Someday we'll have Tom Von Essen on, and I'll have Tom do some of his jokes for you. Tom was the head of the fire department, and I remember it was so important during September 11 to have him around, because here is the guy that got the biggest hit, 343, 10 of his best friends. And he had to run the department. And he lost his upper staff. But he would make, every 10 minutes he make some kind of joke. And he said to me, this is the fire department way. This is the way we face. If you lose your sense of humor, you go bonkers. Yeah. And I think that's really true in a war or a situation like 9/11 or in a crisis situation. You got to have a leader's got to have some kind of sense of humor.
Diversion.
Yeah. But I think it's extraordinarily important. Do you know that Steve Garvey is running for the Republican nomination for the Senate in California? To
Steve Garvey, I know that name.
To replace Dianne Feinstein. The first thing,
ball player.
First improvement he will make is he promises that for 20 years he will not have a red Chinese driver, and be on the Intelligence Committee at the same time. China gets enough help from Biden. They don't need. Feinstein's in Feinstein's obituaries, it was how no one mentions that.
How
she's a Democrat.
How big of a star was Steve Garvey?
Big. All-star team 8-9 times. Would you consider that a star?
Dodger. All with the Dodgers and the Padres. So
MVP once. The big years were with the Dodgers though.
Yeah, but also both California teams. I'm saying.
Yeah. But his big year, it was rather strange when he went to the Padres. I mean, I remember him because they played the Yankees. He was on the Dodger team that played the Thurman Munson, Reggie Jackson Yankees, Billy Martin Yankees. There you go. Let's look down at his. You see, San Diego. First of all, it's basically all Dodger career, right?
Yeah.
What is it, about 4 years at the end?
Yeah, I'm going to put his name.
Let's see how the batting average went down when he was with. I just don't remember him being. He played first base. He was valuable to the Dodgers in those World Series because he was one of their really few left-handed power hitters. And if you play in Yankee Stadium, you need left-handed power hitters. And one of the perennial problems for the Dodgers and why they lost so much to the Yankees in the old days, they were like 1-6 in World Series or 1-7 with the Yankees. They never had enough left-handed power hitters, where the Yankees built their club for their park. Yankees always had two really superb left-handed power hitters, Ruth and Gehrig, and then bit players or guys at the end of their careers. And they have like 2 or 3 great years, like Enos Slaughter and Johnny Mize, the Strawberry.
Gerald Strawberry.
But George was using the Yankee model. Go get yourself a guy, maybe he's been at the end of his career, but he can hit the long ball and he can pull the ball, and there's no better place to do it than Yankee Stadium. Garvey. There was talk of trading for Garvey
in the 70s. You had some good teams. The Yankees had some good teams, right? That was Reggie Jackson, Mr. October,
won the World Series twice.
Mr. October,
and Munson. And Guidry, Ron Guidry. They had a really good team.
78.
But I'm glad to see he's a Republican. He was on the wrong team, but I always liked him. He always was quite a gentleman, clean cut, well dressed when he came out of always seemed interested in things beyond baseball. So
Who's that?
Garvey.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not surprised that he's running.
He's running as a Republican.
He is running as a Republican. Yes. So the Yankees played the Dodgers in that period 3 times, and the Yankees won 2 and the Dodgers won 1. But I'm not sure he was on the third team. I'm not sure he was on that third team that actually beat the Yankees. But he did win a World Series. So when the hell would that have been? That'd have been earlier, maybe.
Steve Garvey, 1981.
Yeah. So so that was against the Yankees. In 81, they beat the Yankees.
The primary election will be in March of 2024.
So he must have gone to the Padres right after that 81 World Series. I was disappointed when he went to the Padres. I get used to a guy being on a team.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. It would be like
You're telling me.
in those days. It would have been as if the Yankees traded Mattingly, or the Yankees. There were certain people, or Munson.
Like brand recognition.
You know, Reggie was traded around so much that it wasn't the same feeling.
Yeah.
But there are certain Jeter, who I think made a brilliant decision staying at the Yankees at the end.
Very few do that now. They all end up they cash out one more time, right?
Yeah, I also think given the Yankee market, which is the biggest,
Oh
if
yeah.
you can be a lifelong Yankee, or at least fake people enough into thinking you were, you can make a lot more money on endorsements.
Bingo. That's a good point. Think of all the Yankees from the 90s, right?
Oh, you
Today.
think of I'll tell you, like Chino Martinez.
Tino Martinez.
But he was not a lifelong Yankee.
But everyone
he
thinks
has
of
the
him as.
feeling of that. Paul O'Neill, same thing.
Those 90s World Series guys.
Most of them came from somewhere else, but their identity because Joe Torre, had a notoriously
David Wells.
tight team. Well, Wellesley went back and forth so much. Like one year
From
he'd be with
Boston.
the Yankees to go to Boston, come back.
He was hanging
back
out
and
all
forth.
sorts of.
But to me, he's a Yankee because
He's friends. You're friends with him, and your son is
and
close
he's
to
one
him.
he's one of my favorites.
David Wells.
Yeah, David is one of my favorites.
He was the character, wasn't he? In a good way. I mean that in a good way.
I
He
went
was
to
someone
many
you.
Yankee games then, and I was there for David Cohn's perfect game a year later, but I wasn't there the day he pitched the perfect game. In fact, I was out doing work as the mayor, and it was the 7th inning, and I was driving home, and I had to decide, will I go watch the last couple of innings at Yankee Stadium or watch them at home? And I elected to watch them at home because I would miss, because I was very close to
home.
Yeah, so I stayed at home, and then I called him afterwards, and I said, David is the mayor. He said, thank you. So congratulations. I'm going to have a ceremony for you and give you the keys to the city. And he said to me, you sure you can trust me?
That's funny. Does Joe Torre have a key to the city?
He's got 5.
You gave him. You were giving
He's
him
got more than I have.
I have a feeling these Yankees players and managers had an inside track with you to get keys to the city, and maybe a little bit extra from the mayor.
Yeah, but
I know you would have treated the Mets the same way.
I would have. I was always fair and equitable. Some of the Yankees, I won't tell you who, would occasionally ask me to do things like when the other team comes in, the guy at the hotel, you think you could give him like diuretics or
pull the fire alarm.
Before,
that was a classic one, right? Pull the fire alarm
one
in the middle of
big
the night.
5th game playoff, and they were teasing me. And they made some calls to me and to my staff to see if we could slip in. Because the hotel that the team was at, I was very close to the management of that hotel. And they said, you think they could slip some diuretics?
I know. Hey,
I didn't do it. I had too much respect for baseball.
For baseball, yeah. Well, that's a whole nother discussion. We haven't even talked to. I've never talked with you about your position on performance enhancers.
Dead set against it, but not so dead set against it. I keep those people out of the Hall of Fame.
McGuire, Sosa.
Yeah, I would look. Putting someone in the Hall of Fame requires judgment, right? I mean, a couple of people just like Mariano Rivera, and it just goes right in. It's not, or Garvey, you just go right in. Now, others are close cases. So these guys with performance enhancing drugs, you got to really ask, and you can do it. Would they have done it without it? So you look at their career before, you look at their career after, and you look at some of them that are kept out. I mean, these guys are great players no matter what. They made a terrible mistake, but that's part of the history of baseball. You can't deny your history. What I don't like is that their records become the records that people not using performance enhancing drugs have to reach because they can't do it. In my mind, the home run king is Judge because he's the only player to have 62 home runs, not the guys who went over 70 with the boost. Every one of them, I think, should not be entitled. They should have their own little record. So Bobby Bonds has the record. But he has the record because he was he was pumping himself up in his arm. So he has the record. It's between him and those guys. But the real record is Aaron Judge. That's 3 people without using performance enhancing drugs hit 60 home runs in the history of baseball. Babe Ruth, Roger Maris, and Aaron Judge. That's it. They also happen to be Yankees.
I was gonna say, where are you going with that?
Or how about also, please, I'm fair enough to say they also have the advantage of the short porch.
That's true.
But one of them was not a left-handed hitter.
That's true.
Judge did not have the advantage of the short porch in the sense that it wasn't a natural, although Judge is so strong that a opposite field home run is not a big effort for him with those gigantic arms. He just, that guy has.
He was the MVP last year.
That guy has one of the best swings and one of the most fearsome. When he's at the plate, he looks like every time he swings, he's going to kill the ball.
Crazy to think he's been there 8 years now. That's crazy. 8 years. I thought Aaron.
I still think it was a young man, right?
Same. Well, I mean, he's still a young man, right? He's younger than me.
Yeah, I know. But
well, I'm at that age, Mayor, where it's weird, right? You get to the age where even like these big star players, right, that are you think of as veterans, they're younger than me, right? Being 32, right? Like a lot of these, they've been around for 10 years. They're still younger than me.
It's been so long since I took my. I'm gonna remind you one more time.
One more time, an extra commercial.
Get your veggies, get your fruits. Balanceofnature.com, promo code Rudy, 35% off. Well, we'll be back with you tomorrow evening, and we'll see if the invasion has started. Tomorrow's Thursday. Everything I was hearing a day or two ago was that was the target. That can always change. And we'll see exactly how the Israelis react and how much damage they do in destroying Hamas, which is, I believe, their goal. And our goal should be to be right there with our friend, the Democratic State of Israel, which is basically still the only one there, and one of our best and most loyal friends. And you people who are supporting the Palestinian Authority,
Hillary Clinton programmed you.
You can't see what they're doing. My goodness, something's wrong. But most Americans, there's not something wrong. There's something right. And God bless you. And God bless America. Our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776. One of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply